And more on the breaking news that we had just last hour. The man who admits shooting Trayvon Martin must go back to jail within 48 hours, we have learned. A judge revoked George Zimmerman's bond, saying he wasn't truthful about just how much money was at his disposal.
You can go out and just use it to get him out that very day. But on the other hand, I think Judge Lester runs a very tight courtroom, as well he should. And he was frustrated because he doesn't think that they were being as straightforward and as honest as he thought they should. And, the revocation of bond, I hope, is temporary. I hope that they will, he'll give us a day in court to explain George's behavior and look at all the circumstances, even the discovery that's come out to date, and determining what he's going to do about letting him back out on bond.
When do you expect him to turn himself in?
Within 48 hours?
Are we talking?
I haven't even spoken to him yet, so no.
Did you read the motion? They talked, apparently, the recorded jailhouse conversation with them talking in code about tens of thousands of dollars. There's a certain amount of collusion here between Mr. Zimmerman's wife and Mr. Zimmerman.
If you consider talking about 10 and 20 and 155 as being code, then maybe you're accurate.
Well,
I've been involved. Yeah, $9, right. And I've involved myself in cases where drug dealers talk, and they talk about watermelons and things like that. When you talk about 9 or 10, I'm not certain that is so much of a code for $80,000 or $90,000 that's legitimately trying to deceive anything. And again, if deception was their intent, why did they disclose it to me the first day that it was discussed, and why did he forward all of the money I asked him to forward, the day we asked him to forward it? So again, we'll vet that out with the judge when we have a hearing.
So do you have a chance to tell George about this? And if
I'm sorry?
Do you have a chance to tell George that this is
Haven't spoken to him yet. About to give him a call.
Did he know on the front end going into this hearing that this was a possibility?
Sure.
And if so, what was his reaction to that?
No reaction at all. We wait until they see what the judge does, both now and at the next hearing.
Was he watching this?
I presume so, but I haven't spoken to him
yet.
yet.
What do you think about the logistics of just getting him back here? Is it a pretty simple process to bring him back here?
We'll accomplish it. We are very concerned about safety still, and we'll maintain that concern, and we'll accomplish it.
And how do you feel about George and Shelley Zimmerman being called liars?
I understand the state's position on it. I disagree with it. That's what adversaries do. I think we'll get it figured out. I think, again, Judge Lester was concerned with whether or not they were being as straightforward as he wanted them to, and I think he wants them to come in person and explain that to him, and we'll certainly give them and the court that opportunity.
How long do you think it'll take to get George back here? Are we talking hours? Are we talking at least a day?
It sounds like I'm talking in code, but it's less than 48 hours because that's what the judge gave us, and we're going to accomplish it.
Are you still significantly concerned about his security?
Yes.
Have you received
Absolutely.
any death threats?
We've just, there's sort of ongoing threats and concerns and complaints. I don't know where along the spectrum they become true threats, but, we're dealing with them the way we want to. Law enforcement's involved as they need to be, and they're vetting through whatever they need to. They'll keep everyone as safe as we can.
Can I shift the question? Because in the court there was a discussion about whether this is a confession made by your client or whether it is a statement made by your client, and you actually didn't let the judge answer that for you. Where are you on that? Have you listened to it, and have you concluded whether it's a confession?
We've begun the process of analyzing the number of statements that he has given voluntarily to the police. I don't want to determine or define them as confession, statement, nuance, or whatever. At the right time, we'll make a decision whether or not they're subject to motions to suppress. And if they're not, then I think that they may not fall under the protection of 119.
Is it time for Shelley Zimmerman to get an attorney? Were you concerned about attorney statements that this might be contempt of court, or the judge's statement that this would be contempt of court?
I hadn't thought about it. I don't believe that that's going to be necessary. We'll deal with it when I speak with him.
A lot of considerations were made for the Zimmerman family when that bond hearing happened, allowing them to present themselves over the phone. Do you think that they've burned off that special consideration in light of this? Or not?
I don't think they should have. I think that the judge will and should maintain the security of all the witnesses and the defendant's family, in this case, as a priority, and I believe that Judge Lester will continue to do that.
How much money is the legal expense?
I think it was, 155 plus another 30, 185. I just don't keep the active daily track of it that I know you guys want me to. All right, thanks very much. Appreciate the time.
Thank you.
All right, so right there we were looking at a live press conference by George Zimmerman's attorney, Marco Mera. Let's bring in now CNN legal analyst Sunny Hostin joining me from New York. So, Sunny, this has all kind of come out just in the past hour. Explain for our viewers why the judge did this, why the judge has kind of changed his position, if you will, to say you have to give bond and then also kind of revoke bond now and say he must report in the next 48 hours.
Right. Well, the state, the government filed a motion to revoke George Zimmerman's bond on they filed a motion based on two things. One, they said that George Zimmerman was asked to surrender his passport to the judge as a condition of being released, a condition of bond. He, in fact, did release or relinquish a passport, but that passport expired in May 2012. The government found out that he, in fact, had a second passport that did not expire until 2014. And so the state felt that he had been dishonest. But the most important, I think, part of the state's motion was ground number two. They say that Shelley Zimmerman, George Zimmerman's wife, lied when she represented to the court that they were an indigent family and that they didn't have a lot of money to scrape together to secure bond for George Zimmerman. Well, the state apparently got hold of several phone calls between George Zimmerman and Shelley Zimmerman. And during those calls, while they're sort of speaking in code
hey,
about
Sunny, I'm going to
money.
jump in real quick because Trayvon Martin's attorney is speaking now, Ben Crump. Let's listen in for a second.
We think it is the most important ruling so far in this entire case.
You've been arguing all along that you didn't think he deserved bond and that he should not have been let out. The prosecutor used the word lie and didn't coat it over with any sugar here.
Well, we think this prosecution made a very compelling case that you all can listen to for yourself, and the judge listened to that testimony and based on the evidence before him made a ruling that he thought was appropriate based on the law. And it is important that we consider to make everything based on the law. Now, I will say that Trayvon's mother and father have always maintained that the killer of their unarmed son should remain in custody until they have the trial, and everybody then will be able to have all the evidence out there. And that's a parent. That's a grieving parent saying, I want the person who killed my son to be put in jail, because they've always believed if the shoe was on the other foot, that Trayvon Martin would have been put in jail on day one and he would not have been given bail. They've only asked for equal justice, nothing more, nothing less.
So when he turns himself in, assuming he does as demanded by the court, do you believe that he should have the right to make a claim for another bond?
Well, again, the parents have always said that they want the killer of their son to remain in custody until the trial. Now, it will be based on the law and Judge Lester's ruling whether or not he will release George Zimmerman, but he has to look at the evidence of what has transpired at that bond hearing and what has transpired based on the evidence he considered today that the special prosecutor had presented through their office in their discovery.
Have you talked to Sabrina or Tracy? Any reaction that they have?
I'm looking forward to going to call them now. As you would expect, they have been watching this intensely because that's their son that died here. And, you know, it's important to them for just obvious reasons, but when your son is killed and then there's all these things being said, you want to pay attention so you can defend your son's honor. And that's all these parents have been trying to do. They're doing what any other parent would have done in the same situation.
Did we learn anything new about Mr. Zimmerman today that anything you didn't know?
I think it's important that one of the things you saw in there today, it was rather obvious that on the day of the bond hearing, George Zimmerman sat there and saw a parade of witnesses, a parade of testimony, right, with the sole intent of proving that he was almost indigent, right, which we now know that the candor from that particular situation was not there. And I think that's the one thing that came out today that was very evident that was not the case. And certainly it went back to the case in point here that his credibility is greatly in question.
So let me see if I understand this correctly. You believe that if he lied about his money and his passport, then he may also be lying about what happened that night?
We fully expect that the special prosecutor will make George Zimmerman's credibility be front and center in this entire case. And whatever dishonesty that comes forth by George Zimmerman that they can prove, you can best believe it would be the issue of this case, and rightfully so. I think everybody wants credibility, and everybody wants it to be transparent. So when you have a full, fair, transparent trial, then everybody in America can accept the outcome.
We all win.
And everybody wins when it's transparent and it's fair. And that's all I think all the lawyers in this case, the special prosecutor, the defense team, certainly we as representatives of the family, and certainly the mother and father of Trayvon Martin want it to be a fair trial. They really concerned about, can their son get a fair trial? That is an important issue with them.
What do you make of the conversation?
I want to get out of this now. We're looking at a live press conference in Sanford, Florida. That was the attorney for the Trayvon Martin family. I want to bring back in Sunny Hostin. Sunny, sorry to cut you off there when we wanted to just get to that press conference real quick. So what do you make of this? What do you make of this now? It's not surprising, obviously, that Trayvon Martin's family would like to see George Zimmerman in jail until they at least get to trial, and beyond that, of course. But you see there that their attorney is kind of making the case of using this to set up their case going forward. This credibility question, almost saying that he was lying in order to get bond.
Yeah, I mean, it is an issue now, right? Because the government alleged, and obviously the judge agreed, that George Zimmerman knew when he let his wife and the rest of his family members represent to the court that they were, in fact, indigent, and it would be very difficult for them to put together enough money to make bond. And that was their argument in terms of getting the judge to give them a reasonable bond. And we know that the judge gave them a bond of about $150,000, which means they only had to put down about 10%. Well, George Zimmerman and Shelley Zimmerman, according to jailhouse phone call records, were talking a lot on the phone about money that had been transferred from George Zimmerman's PayPal account, money he had raised on that website, The Real George Zimmerman, and had transferred about $135,000 into a credit union account. And so the judge felt that he had been lied to, and that does call into question now George Zimmerman's credibility as well as his wife's.
All right, Sunny Hostin, thanks so much. Sunny, we'll talk to you soon. Just to recap real quick for our viewers, this is a judge in Seminole County, Florida, has revoked bond for George Zimmerman, who is facing charges relating to the shooting death of 17-year-old Trayvon Martin, a case we've been following closely, and a new development here today. We'll have much more, of course, on that to come. So we do have a lot more news to cover in the next little while. Take a look.
Thousands of people in Florida being purged from voter rolls. The state says it's just doing its duty, but the Department of Justice says they're violating the law. Plus, the war in Wisconsin. It's mayor versus governor, and today a former president steps in.
You have a choice here, and the choice, I think, is pretty simple.
And a milestone for a monarch. London gears up for a major celebration as Queen Elizabeth marks 60 years on the throne. Brooke Baldwin tells us what's in store at this weekend's Diamond Jubilee.